Hi, and welcome to episode 146 of the 4Ps. And if you didn't know, once a year, the Hershey's Company actually offers a program called Fresh from the Factory that not many people do know about. It's where you can order the freshest chocolate straight to your home, not direct to consumer, more direct to mouth, because it actually bypasses the regional and local supply chain and reduces the weeks and months of the chocolate just sitting in trucks or in a warehouse or on the shelves before you can actually buy it and eat it. The 4Ps. Professional. Political. Practical. Personal. I mean, who wouldn't want a fresh Reese's peanut butter cup or 40 right about now? So check out shop.hersheys.com, and you're welcome. Alright, so something personal. The month of March is, without question, one of my favorite months of the year. Sure, this is the only month that is also a command, March. But March is also the only time each year that I connect and interact with many of the people in the outer spheres of my personal network. Old friends, former colleagues, distant family members, former NBA players, current college NCAA coaches, elected officials, total strangers who I've known for 20 years but never actually met in real life. They fill up my inbox and my email communication for a good 2 or 3 weeks, but only those 2 or 3 weeks each year, for one reason. And it serves as a temporary reminder that there's still at least one thing that unites us as a people. That's right, my friends. The greatest sporting event of the year, March Madness, and the greatest sports bracket pool, March Madness, are only a week or so away. Back in 1994, I started my first analog, on paper, NCAA tournament pool for like 20 or so of my friends. I think I was a sophomore in high school, and my two biggest concerns that year were not getting caught by a teacher doing this while also studying for the PSATs. I remember handing out blank brackets from the newspaper, copied sloppily and just not aligned properly on the high school library's Xerox machine, and then handing them out to a bunch of people before classes, staying after school to collect them. I even carried my first filled out bracket with me to the first ever NCAA tournament game I went to at the Nassau Coliseum as I was cheering mightily watching my future university, the Penn Quakers, knock off the Nebraska Cornhuskers in the first round of the NCAA tournament. I'm not sure if I was more excited because of the win and the upset or the fact that I actually picked the game accurately in that pool. That first pool 27 years ago cost only $20 per entry. And each bracket this year for the pool that I still run is only $20. Talk about a value. Of course, the pool's only grown over the years, and it's become like 99% digital for the last 2 decades. The only people who are still doing anything analog are the people who are mailing me physical checks to pay for their entry fees. It's gotten larger and larger literally every single year with hundreds of people. I think this year's total pot is likely to go over $10,000. COVID put a serious wrench in last year's 2020 college basketball season, and the NCAA tournament was ultimately canceled, as was March Madness, the NCAA tournament pool. There was a great deal of disappointment at the time, but in retrospect, it was probably the right thing to do. This year's college basketball season has been really unique, with teams playing uneven number of games and empty arenas. Traditional powerhouse teams like Duke and Michigan State are struggling to even make the tournament. This year's NCAA tournament is going to be held in a very different kind of bubble in Indianapolis without any fans in attendance. Every team all in one city at the same time. Never before been done. Now, this year's event is going to be both a return to normal in the fact that they're having a tournament, as well as a constant reminder as you watch these games that COVID is still a very serious threat to our population. There was only one collegiate conference that chose not to participate in the college basketball season, and it's going to be sad not to see an Ivy League team in the NCAA tournament this year. But as Selection Sunday approaches, everyone, from the athletes to the fans to the casual gambler. We're sitting around like a coiled spring with our highlighters and Sharpies at the ready. So do yourself a favor and load up at least $20 into your Venmo account, because in the next week or two, you might be getting an email from me to join the madness. The madness. Have fun. Now, something professional. And one of the worst traits any manager can have is the inability to let go. It's especially hard with founders of startups and team builders and owners of companies. You think you're being helpful by being very involved, but the painful truth is that you're typically just standing in the way of other people's development. As a young manager early on in my own career, I remember getting really good advice that I've strived to both enact and pass on to others. And that is, as a manager, to figure out how to become replaceable. Of course, this doesn't mean you have to leave an organization, but ultimately putting the people and processes and tools in place to ensure that things are running smoothly, and then finding new challenges to prioritize and tackle and solve. Maybe it's less day-to-day involvement and more broader mentorship, because you don't have to be involved in the day-to-day. I had 3 very different roles in my 10 years at 360i. And my goal always, as I started out in each of those roles, was to figure out over time how to make myself obsolete in a number of those responsibilities within each role, at least in like the daily operational business. It's easy to get caught up in all of the details, right? But your job as a manager is to set up organizational structure, find the right people, and enable your employees to do their best possible jobs without constant input. Being replaceable as a manager allows you to focus on what you should be doing, right? Being a leader, seeing bigger ideas, finding new things that you want to accomplish. So how do we do this? As a manager, defining either a project or desired outcome, the first priority is always going to be to ensure that there are clearly defined tasks. When you divide things up into as many small steps as possible, it has the added benefit of actually keeping people motivated, because for every step that they complete, they'll feel like they're making progress and getting closer to their goals. It's after you set up those tasks, you want to assign the tasks and make sure that everyone knows who's actually responsible and accountable for what. Maybe that does mean having a RACI, right? Who's responsible, usually the senior most person, but who's accountable for the day-to-day, who provides consultative support, and who just needs to kind of be informed of what's happening. If you're a manager who finds herself or himself feeling overwhelmed, right, your first thought should be, how do you delegate? And the key to effective delegation is to make an honest assessment of what kind of tasks you may not be particularly good at or even passionate about. These are the things that you need to delegate first to others. Of course, delegation only works when you've hired the right people. So in recruiting, you're looking for the right mix of people with hard skills and those soft skills to do that job. That's personality and passion and purpose, but also problem-solving abilities. For me, that means people who can see big ideas, but also know how to get things done. No matter what your business is, there will be times when slowing down will add more value than speeding up. This means deprioritizing certain revenue-driving opportunities to invest more time in building up your people, or finding different, more efficient ways to accomplish tasks. Right? There's an author, Ari Meisel, who says that anything that you do more than twice, there should be a process for it. And if there's a process, they can almost definitively be automated. But perhaps the single most important trait required to become a replaceable manager is how you become more organized with your time and ideas. For me, that means writing things down, capturing the abundance of information that we're exposed to each day, whether it's from colleagues or in emails or the newsletters and tweets that you see or clubhouse talks that you're a part of. So writing things down, for me, I actually have a separate email address where I just send a lot of that information and then organize myself. But that helps me stay organized with my time, keep track of what others are doing, and then ultimately becoming replaceable in individual tasks. This is something practical, And hopefully, no matter where you are in your life or your career, you will find value in what it is that I'm about to share. Because honestly, just about every job listing and description these days requires excellent communication skills. Though it's hard to imagine a time when people would have been comfortable with mediocre communication skills, but that's a different story. So what does this mean, really? Even the most brilliant, organized thoughts are useless without the ability to write and speak with clarity and conviction. Now, for me, strong writing would be at the top of that list, at the center of all communication skills, but this doesn't just magically happen for most people overnight. It takes years of practice and refinement and openness to feedback and editing from more experienced communicators. Effective writers communicate through frameworks. Right? They benefit from outlines and from planning. Different advice on how to be a good writer over the years has come in and out of my head. Like, speak like a writer, write like a speaker, whatever that means. Be a storyteller. These are very high-level cliches. They may sound overcomplicated. They may sound undercomplicated. But they're really just structures that make it easier for the reader to follow. Usually there's a simplified common denominator for how to do this. And some examples of these types of writing structures are thesis, antithesis, synthesis, or introduction, body, and conclusion. Even devices like lists or alliteration, 4 Ps, can help. But the guide that works best for me is now thinking how to write like a marketer. Marketers first seek to gain a better understanding of the audience, no matter who they're communicating to. Then they use a command of language and creativity to drive an outcome with a message. So whether it's writing a letter or an email or something more complex like copywriting or journalism or even just social media posts, good writing is active, brief, and clear. See? ABC structure. The active voice makes the written word energetic. It's engaging, it's concise, and it's easier for readers to understand. Good writing avoids weak verbs like is and was, or were and has and have and had. You want to do that as much as possible. So instead, you turn to power verbs to create appealing sentences that don't require as many other words. Marketing is all about the pitch, right? Whether it's pitching a creative idea or crafting a mass message to consumers or writing targeted content for an email campaign. But we as marketers consider the problem we're trying to solve and a solution, right, for the market and the business objectives of the company. So we ask ourselves a number of questions. Why is this important? What are the repercussions? Why does it matter? Why am I able to better communicate a solution to this issue in some way than others, or that others have been able to do in the past? What's going to set me apart from others doing something similar? A great writing also has its own version of a unique selling proposition, which is something that all marketers keep in the back of their mind. The USP explains why you, why this, why now, why am I telling this story, what do I hope to achieve, what do I want the audience to know or do or feel as a result. Last but not least, editing. Crafting perfection on the first draft of something written, whether it's an email or a report or a presentation, it's impossible. With patience, though, and reflection and rereading and just a fresh set of eyes over time, editing will make or break the success of your writing. I also read my writing out loud because my ears are better than my eyes when it comes to picking up errors or typos or just hearing how things sound. There's more to good writing and storytelling than just crafting a narrative. A great storyteller also considers how to deliver the story to capture the audience's attention. The secret to becoming a writer that people want to read is to think strategically and analytically and empathetically about your audience and what matters to them. When you're armed with knowledge about who's going to receive your words, you can personalize your intent and the message to get the most impact out of that communication. And something political. Over the past week, there have been several instances of prominent athletes facing criticism for speaking out against injustice and other important social issues. It's actually not just the last week, but we've seen more prominent instances of athletes being told to stay in their lane or stick to sports. The U.S. women's national soccer team captain, Becky Sauerbrunn, and NBA star LeBron James have both used their platforms in the last few days to advocate for change and speak out against some of these issues. But athletes are just one group of prominent leaders who are becoming increasingly mobilized in the pursuit of progress. You see Microsoft founder Bill Gates, who champions a number of global health and climate crisis issues. These are leaders by action and example. Now, other business leaders are following those examples on other important issues, and one that's incredibly important to me, which is gun safety. I don't believe that any private citizen should own a gun, but expanding judicial interpretation of the Second Amendment over the years has indefinitely postponed this debate. I'm just not going to win it. No one is. According to the Gun Violence Archive, though, there have already been over 7,000 gun-related deaths in the U.S. this year, since January 1st. My anti-gun stance may position me as more of an extremist on the overall opinion spectrum on this issue, but I will not apologize for being an extremist for saving lives. I will not abandon my hope that we can someday repeal or amend the Second Amendment. I don't understand anyone who feels that the need or desire to own a weapon outweighs somebody else's right to live. But the reality of our current political and social landscape is such that guns are likely not going anywhere. So instead, our objectives need to be more achievable, and the narrative we pursue has to start moving the needle, even if it's just slightly. One step at a time. Sure, most gun owners are responsible, yes. And many own guns to protect themselves and their families, and that's all they ever have it for. So as we come back to important leaders taking a stand and organizing, there are many business leaders who do align on this topic. And that's why I support the Gun Safety Alliance. It's an organization of business leaders from the creative and tech and marketing community who have joined forces with nonprofit gun violence prevention organizations like Giffords and Brady and Everytown. Together, this group is smart enough to understand that change happens slowly, and they're shifting the conversation from gun control to gun safety. Well, last week I was really fortunate to join a clubhouse chat with about really only 70 people, but they included Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, along with national leaders from those organizations. And the discussion also included, and in many cases was led by, dozens of senior executives from some of America's biggest companies: Facebook, Lowe's, WW, the company formerly known as Weight Watchers. Without question, it was the most significant and meaningful conversation I've been a part of on Clubhouse since joining last year. But the objective of the Gun Safety Alliance is simple. We want to work together as leaders from every industry to reduce gun deaths in the U.S. by 50% by the year 2030. So how we do that? That's more challenging and requires operational and organizational and inspirational leadership. But some critical opportunities to start with include mandatory universal background checks for anyone who wants to buy a gun, which is something that like 90% of Americans agree with. We want to close the gun show loopholes. We want to ban automatic and semi-automatic guns and outlaw those high-capacity magazines. Why do you need 100 bullets shooting a minute? I mean, it's absurd. There are also red flag and stand your ground laws that a number of states have that really don't do anything to help fight gun safety. So we want to fight those. And mandate gun storage improvements. Just how you store your guns, it needs to be better. Kids should not be finding them. These are common sense changes that will save lives in the short term and the long term, and do nothing to inhibit the legal right that you currently have to own a gun. Ultimately, only a smart, ongoing, concerted effort to hold ourselves and society accountable for ending this violence is going to create better and a safer future for all of us. So let's do this.